At negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, your freezer would be considered a warm day. Welcome to the Arctic, where for thousands of years, the Inuit turned a frozen wasteland into home sweet home. While most people would see certain death, they saw possibilities. The first secret to their survival? It wasn't some high-tech Gore-Tex jacket or battery-powered heated socks. Their solution was walking around in their neighborhood, literally. The caribou that roamed their lands provided everything they needed for the perfect Arctic outfit. The Inuits' clothing design would put modern fashion houses to shame. They created what we might call the world's first smart clothing, double-layered garments made entirely from caribou skin. The inner layer had the fur facing inward, creating a cozy microclimate against the skin. The outer layer, with fur facing outward, acted as a windbreaker that would make today's synthetic materials jealous. What made caribou fur so special? Each hollow hair trapped tiny pockets of air, creating nature's version of modern insulation. A single square inch of caribou fur contains about 2,000 hollow hairs. For perspective, that's like having 2,000 tiny thermal bottles strapped to your body. The Inuit didn't just grab any caribou hide, though. They specifically chose winter-killed caribou because these animals had developed the thickest, most insulating coats. But it gets really clever when the Inuit weren't just making warm clothes, they were creating climate-controlled suits. They understood that sweating in the Arctic was as dangerous as being cold. Once sweat freezes against your skin, you're in serious trouble. Their solution? They tailored their garments to allow just enough ventilation to prevent overheating while keeping the warmth in. The craftsmanship was incredible. Women would chew the caribou hide to soften it, making it pliable enough to work with. Yes, you read that right, they chewed it. Try explaining that to someone who complains about having to iron their shirts. This process could take days, but it resulted in clothing that was as flexible as it was warm. The women would often gather together for these sessions, turning what might seem like a tedious task into a social activity where stories were shared and skills were passed down to younger generations. They even developed different styles for different conditions. The amauti, a women's parka, included a built-in baby pouch in the back. This kept infants warm while allowing mothers to move freely. It was basically a North Face jacket and a baby carrier rolled into one, except it actually worked in negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. The pouch was designed so perfectly that babies could be slipped from one side to the other without exposure to the cold, and mothers could even nurse their children without removing their warm clothing. The mittens they made weren't just accessories, they were survival tools. Made with separate thumb pieces for better grip, these mittens often included a slit in the palm. This allowed hunters to quickly access their bare hands for tasks requiring fine motor skills without having to remove the whole mitten. When you're trying to handle hunting equipment in freezing temperatures, this design feature could mean the difference between catching dinner and losing fingers to frostbite. The boots, called qulliqs, were perhaps their most impressive creation. They were made with several layers, including a waterproof outer layer from sealskin and an inner layer of soft, insulating caribou fur. The design was so effective that many modern Arctic researchers still prefer traditional Inuit-style boots over modern alternatives. Each region developed its own distinct style of qulliqs, with subtle variations in design that reflected local conditions and available materials. In temperatures cold enough to freeze mercury, which is negative 37.8 degrees Fahrenheit, properly dressed Inuit could maintain a comfortable body temperature with minimal activity. Modern Arctic gear companies spend millions on research and development to achieve what the Inuit perfected centuries ago through observation and ingenuity. The clothing wasn't just functional, it was also beautiful. Intricate patterns were often sewn into the garments using sinew thread, and decorative elements like fur trim were added to create distinct styles. Different regions developed their own fashion traditions, making it possible to identify where someone was from just by looking at their clothing patterns. It was like having a built-in GPS system, except instead of satellites, it used style. Every piece of the caribou was used in clothing making. The softest belly fur was reserved for children's clothing, while the tougher hide from the legs was used for boots. Even the sinews were carefully removed and processed to create strong waterproof thread that expanded when wet, naturally sealing any holes in the stitching. Talk about zero waste. While we focused on how the Inuit kept warm with their incredible clothing, staying cozy wasn't just about what they wore. The Inuit mastered the art of building comfortable homes in a place where most property developers wouldn't dare to break ground. Their secret? They turned the very thing that threatened to freeze them, snow, into their salvation. The igloo stands as one of humanity's most ingenious architectural achievements, and that's not just hot air. These dome-shaped structures could be built in as little as 1 hour by skilled builders, which puts modern rapid construction to shame. Try getting a contractor to build you a house that quickly they'll laugh you right out of their office. The engineering behind igloos is nothing short of brilliant. The snow blocks aren't just randomly stacked. They're arranged in a precise spiral pattern that would make mathematicians proud. Each block is cut at a slight angle, creating an inward lean that results in a perfect dome. The blocks get progressively smaller as they spiral upward, with the final block at the top acting as a keystone that locks everything in place. It's like a gigantic three-dimensional puzzle where getting it wrong means your bedroom becomes a cold shower. The construction process itself was a testament to efficiency. Using special snow knives made from caribou antler or bone, builders would cut blocks roughly 2 feet long, 1 foot high, and 8 inches thick. These dimensions weren't random. They were perfected over generations to create blocks that were both sturdy enough to support weight and light enough for one person to lift. A typical igloo might use anywhere from 50 to 100 blocks, all cut and placed with remarkable precision. Here's a fact that blows modern insulation standards out of the water. A properly built igloo can be 40 degrees warmer inside than outside. With outside temperatures at negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the interior can maintain a relatively cozy 32 degrees Fahrenheit, just warm enough to keep snow from melting. Modern houses with their fancy insulation can't even come close to that kind of temperature differential without burning through enough energy to power a small city. The secret lies in the snow itself. Contrary to what you might think, snow is an excellent insulator when properly compacted. The Inuit would look for snow that was firm enough to cut into blocks, but not too hard. The kind of snow that makes terrible snowballs, but perfect houses. They would test the snow with their snow knives, looking for that perfect consistency. It's like being a snow sommelier, except instead of tasting wine, you're sampling building materials. The entrance tunnel is another stroke of genius. It's built lower than the living area, creating a cold trap that keeps warm air inside while preventing frigid air from flowing in. Basic physics at work: cold air sinks, warm air rises. The Inuit understood this principle long before it was written in any physics textbook. The tunnel also served as a windbreak, ensuring that even during the fiercest storms, the interior remained stable. Some entrances were so well designed that they could keep out hungry polar bears. Talk about effective home security. Inside, the igloo was far from empty. A raised platform of snow covered with caribou furs served as both bed and sitting area. This platform was crucial because warm air would rise to this level, making it the coziest spot in the house. Below the platform, temperatures remained cool enough to store frozen food. Nature's refrigerator, no electricity required. The platform itself took up about 2/3 of the interior space, leaving the lower area for storage and cooking. The ventilation system was equally clever. A small hole at the top of the dome allowed warm air to escape slowly while providing fresh air intake. This prevented the interior from becoming too warm and causing the structure to melt. The hole was typically plugged with snow during extremely cold weather, allowing the builders to regulate temperature with surprising precision. It was basically a prehistoric thermostat. Multiple igloos could be connected to create larger living spaces, forming what you might call the world's first snow-based apartment complex. Families would often build a main living igloo connected to smaller storage igloos. Some communities created entire igloo villages, complete with interconnecting tunnels. It was like an Arctic version of an underground subway system, except everyone knew their neighbors and nobody complained about the service delays. The inside walls of the igloo would gradually develop a glossy ice coating from the heat of oil lamps and human breath. Rather than being a problem, this ice layer actually strengthened the structure and provided better insulation. Over time, this coating could grow to be several inches thick, creating an even more effective barrier against the cold. It's probably the only time in history when having ice on your walls was a good thing. While their clothing kept them warm on the move, these remarkable snow houses provided the perfect complement to their mobile lifestyle. And speaking of staying warm, The Inuit had another trick up their fur-lined sleeves. The challenge of making fire in the Arctic seems like a bad joke. What do you do in a place where everything's frozen and trees don't grow? For most people, this would be a deal breaker. For the Inuit, it was just another problem to solve with ingenuity and a lot of seal blubber. The heart of every Inuit home was the qulliq, a masterpiece of engineering disguised as a simple lamp. Carved from soapstone, these crescent-shaped vessels weren't just lights. They were the Swiss Army knives of the Arctic. A well-maintained qulliq could heat a space, cook food, dry clothes, and provide light all at once. Modern appliance manufacturers are still trying to catch up with this level of multitasking efficiency. The secret to the qulliq's success lay in its precise design. The rim had a small lip that held the fuel, usually seal or whale blubber, while a wick made from Arctic cotton grass or moss ran along the edge. This combination created a steady, controlled flame that could burn for hours. The Inuit discovered that crushed moss mixed with seal oil burned longer and brighter than moss alone. An early example of fuel efficiency that would make today's energy experts nod in approval. One qulliq could produce enough heat to raise the temperature inside an igloo by 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Given that a pound of seal blubber contains roughly 4,500 calories of energy, more than twice that of premium wood, these lamps packed a serious thermal punch. A single seal could provide enough fuel to keep a family's qulliq burning for over a month. In today's terms, that's like running your home heating system for a month on just 40 pounds of fuel. But maintaining the perfect flame was an art form. Women were traditionally responsible for tending the qulliq, a task that required constant attention and skill. They used special tools called takuti to adjust the wick, ensuring the flame stayed just right. Too high, and you'd waste precious fuel. Too low, and you'd lose heat and light. It was like being a DJ at the world's most important light show, except instead of entertaining a crowd, you were keeping your family alive. The soapstone used to make qulliqs wasn't just any old rock. It had to be soft enough to carve, but hard enough to withstand heat without cracking. The best soapstone deposits were highly valued, and their locations were passed down through generations. Some archaeological evidence suggests that soapstone quarries were so important that different groups would travel hundreds of miles to trade for this precious material. The most prized soapstone had a perfect balance of minerals that made it both workable and durable. The process of rendering blubber into fuel was itself a feat of chemical engineering. The Inuit would carefully slice the blubber into thin strips, allowing it to slowly render in the heat of another qulliq. As it melted, the oil would separate from the tissue, creating a clean burning fuel. Nothing was wasted. Even the leftover crackling could be eaten, providing a high-energy snack that puts modern protein bars to shame. A skilled processor could extract up to 95% of the available oil from the blubber. The smoke from a properly maintained qulliq was minimal, crucial in a small enclosed space like an igloo. The flame produced mainly water vapor and carbon dioxide, making it one of the cleanest burning traditional fuel sources known. Modern tests have shown that a well-maintained qulliq produces less indoor air pollution than many wood-burning stoves used today. Some researchers have even studied qulliq design principles to improve modern oil lamp efficiency. Different sizes of qulliqs serve different purposes. Small personal lamps were used for traveling, while larger communal ones could span several feet and heat entire gathering spaces. Some ceremonial qulliqs were so large they required multiple wicks and could burn for days without refueling. These were often used during important community celebrations where their light and warmth became central to social gatherings. The largest documented qulliq was nearly 4 feet across and could maintain a steady flame for over a week. The relationship between the qulliq and the igloo was symbiotic. The dome shape of the igloo helped circulate the heat from the lamp, while the ice glaze that formed on the interior walls reflected light, maximizing the lamp's efficiency. This reflection could amplify the light output by up to 30%, making even a small flame seem much brighter. It was a perfect example of how every aspect of Inuit technology worked together in harmony. Storage of fuel was another challenge mastered. Seal oil would freeze solid at low temperatures, so containers were kept near the qulliq to keep the oil liquid and ready for use. Special bone containers were designed with spouts that made it easy to pour the oil without spilling, a feature you might recognize in modern oil cans. These containers often included clever design elements like ridged bottoms that prevented them from sliding on ice, while the qulliq's warmth kept the cold at bay, and its light brightened the long Arctic nights. Surviving in such harsh conditions required more than just fire and shelter. For the Inuit, patience isn't just a virtue in the Arctic, it's dinner. While modern hunters might complain about sitting in a heated blind for a few hours, Inuit hunters would wait motionless by a seal breathing hole for up to 8 hours in temperatures that would freeze a freezer. That's what you call dedication to getting takeout. The art of seal hunting required an almost superhuman level of patience combined with split-second timing. Seals need to surface for air every 15 to 20 minutes, using breathing holes they maintain in the ice. These holes might look random to the untrained eye, but Inuit hunters could tell which ones were active just by examining subtle signs in the surrounding ice and snow. It's like having a PhD in seal real estate. Each breathing hole had its own personality. Some were primary holes that seals used regularly, while others served as emergency backup exits. A skilled hunter could read the ice around these holes like a newspaper, determining not just if a seal had been there, but how recently and how often. They could even estimate the size of the seal based on the hole's characteristics, a skill that puts modern fish finder technology to shame. The hunting station itself was a masterpiece of minimalist design. Hunters would build a small snow block to block the wind and provide some camouflage. They'd place a piece of polar bear fur on the ice to stand on. Not for comfort, but because seals could hear the slightest sound of boots scraping against ice from underwater. The fur muffled any movement, giving new meaning to the phrase, quiet as a mouse. The harpoon used for seal hunting wasn't just a pointy stick. It was an engineering marvel with a toggling head that would pivot sideways under the seal's skin, making it impossible for the animal to escape. The shaft was usually made from driftwood, a precious resource in the treeless Arctic, and could be separated from the head, connected by a strong leather line. Some harpoon designs were so effective that they remained virtually unchanged for thousands of years. When something works that well, you don't fix it. Dogs played a crucial role in hunting. Not just any dogs, but specifically bred Inuit sled dogs with an incredible sense of smell and the stamina to work in extreme conditions. These dogs could detect a seal's breathing hole from impressive distances. Some accounts suggest up to a mile away. They were also excellent at finding holes hidden by fresh snow, saving hunters countless hours of searching. It was like having a four-legged GPS system with built-in seal detection technology. The actual moment of the hunt required perfect timing. When a seal surfaced for air, the hunter had less than 2 seconds to strike. Miss that window, and it might be another 20 minutes before getting another chance. This explains why young hunters spent years practicing their technique before ever attempting to catch a real seal. The success rate for experienced hunters was remarkably high. Some studies suggest around 90% when conditions were favorable. But seals weren't the only prey. During the spring and summer, hunters would pursue caribou using strategies that required deep understanding of animal behavior. They would construct large stone cairns in V-shaped patterns that guided caribou toward waiting hunters. Some of these hunting structures still stand today, silent testimonials to the sophistication of traditional hunting methods. The tools themselves tell a story of innovation. Take the qulliq, a curved hook used to retrieve seals from their breathing holes. Its design was so perfect for its purpose that when modern engineers analyzed it, they found it represented the optimal curve for its function. The Inuit had achieved through generations of refinement what modern computers would calculate as the ideal design. Every successful hunt set off a chain of community activity. Nothing was wasted. Meat, blubber, skin, bones, and organs all had specific uses. A single seal could provide food for several families, oil for lamps, waterproof boot soles, and materials for tools. Even the intestines were cleaned and sewn together to make waterproof parkas. Modern companies talk about zero-waste initiatives. The Inuit perfected this concept centuries ago. The traditions and knowledge required for successful hunting were passed down through careful instruction and observation. Young hunters learned to read weather patterns, ice conditions, animal behavior, and countless other variables that could mean the difference between success and failure. This knowledge, accumulated over thousands of years, represented one of the most sophisticated systems of environmental understanding ever developed. While the warmth of the qulliq welcomed hunters home after a successful hunt. The work was far from over. In a land where temperatures rarely climbed above freezing, every snowbank was a potential storage unit. But preserving food in the Arctic required more than just letting nature do the work. It demanded techniques so clever they'd put today's food science labs to shame. Take igloo, for example, aged walrus meat that underwent a carefully controlled fermentation process. The meat would be buried in a sealskin bag under layers of stone and moss during autumn, left to age through the winter, and retrieved in spring. The result? A delicacy that took months to perfect and seconds to judge whether you'd done it right. One wrong move in the preparation, and you'd end up with something that would make last week's forgotten lunch look appetizing. The Inuit developed an entire science around meat storage. Different animals required different techniques. Seal meat might be buried in gravel pits along the shore, where the natural salinity and cold temperatures created perfect preservation conditions. These pits weren't just holes in the ground. They were sophisticated storage systems with drainage layers and protective coverings that prevented scavenging animals from turning them into takeout spots. Fish presented its own preservation challenges. One ingenious method involved freeze-drying fish in the winter air. Fish would be caught through holes in the ice, cleaned, and hung on racks where the Arctic winds would remove all moisture while the cold prevented spoilage. The result was a lightweight, protein-rich food that could last for months. It was like making fish jerky, except nature did all the dehydrating work. But perhaps the most fascinating preservation method was the creation of qulliq. This dish involved stuffing hundreds of small birds, feathers and all, into a seal skin which was then sewn shut and placed under rocks to ferment for several months. The process might sound strange, but it created a sustainable food source during the darkest winter months when hunting was nearly impossible. It was the Arctic equivalent of canning, except instead of mason jars, they used seal skins. Temperature control was crucial. The Inuit knew exactly which types of snow and ice would provide the best insulation for different foods. They would dig storage chambers at specific depths where temperatures remained relatively stable. Some of these traditional storage methods maintained such precise temperature control that modern scientists have studied them to improve contemporary food preservation techniques. Timing was everything. Certain foods had to be prepared during specific seasons to ensure proper preservation. Spring whale meat would be cut into strips and dried in the relatively warmer air, creating a product that could last through the following winter. The process required perfect timing. Too early, and the meat might spoil. Too late, and it wouldn't dry properly. Nothing went to waste in this system. Even parts of animals that might seem inedible to outsiders were carefully preserved. Seal flippers would be buried in particular ways to achieve a specific fermentation. Caribou stomachs, complete with their partially digested contents, were considered a delicacy and preserved through specialized techniques. It might not sound appetizing to modern tastes, but these foods provided crucial nutrients during the winter months. The Inuit also mastered the art of blubber preservation. Different types of fat required different handling methods. Whale blubber might be stored in whole chunks, while seal blubber would be rendered into oil. The oil itself was stored in containers made from whole seal skins, which were carefully prepared to ensure they wouldn't leak. These containers could hold up to 50 gallons of oil, enough to keep a family supplied with both food and fuel through the winter. Modern food preservation might rely on electricity and chemicals, but the Inuit methods were purely organic, sustainable, and remarkably effective. They developed what might be called the world's first truly sustainable food storage system, one that worked in harmony with the environment rather than against it. But having food was just the beginning. Thriving in the Arctic demanded an even deeper understanding of survival. Today's health gurus might rave about their raw food diets, but the Inuit were living that lifestyle long before it became trendy. Though their version would probably shock most modern health food stores. Raw seal liver wasn't exactly a smoothie bowl, but it packed more vitamin C than a bag of oranges. The Inuit diet turned conventional nutrition wisdom on its head. With almost no access to fruits and vegetables, they should have been prime candidates for scurvy, a vitamin C deficiency that plagued European explorers. Yet they remained remarkably healthy. Their secret? Fresh, raw meat contained all the vitamins they needed. A single serving of raw seal liver provides more vitamin C than 6 oranges, while whale skin offers a hefty dose of vitamin D, crucial during those endless winter nights. Dental health presented another fascinating contradiction. Despite having no access to modern dental care, or perhaps because of it, many Inuit maintained surprisingly healthy teeth well into old age. Their secret weapon: tough, chewy meat that acted like nature's dental floss, clearing away bacteria and strengthening jaw muscles. They also chewed on sealskin, which helped clean their teeth. It wasn't exactly minty fresh, but it worked better than many modern dental products. The Inuit approach to medicine was equally practical. They used various natural antibiotics, including Arctic herbs and certain types of molds that grew on whale meat. These traditional remedies have since been studied by modern scientists who discovered that some contain compounds similar to penicillin. Who needs a pharmacy when you've got scientifically proven remedies growing on your dinner? Their high-fat diet would make most modern nutritionists faint, but it was perfectly adapted to Arctic survival. Up to 75% of their calories came from fat, primarily from marine mammals. This diet provided the intense energy needed to stay warm and active in extreme cold. Modern research has shown that their bodies adapted to process these fats differently than other populations, proving that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to healthy eating. Even their sleeping patterns were optimized for Arctic living. During the dark winter months, they developed specific routines to maintain physical and mental health. Regular physical activity, combined with social gatherings and storytelling, helped combat what we now call seasonal affective disorder. They were treating winter blues centuries before light therapy lamps became a thing. The Inuit understanding of medicinal plants was remarkable, especially considering the limited vegetation in their environment. They knew which plants could reduce fever, ease digestive problems, or help with inflammation. Labrador tea, made from small evergreen leaves, was used to boost the immune system and treat colds. It turns out this tea contains compounds with proven antibacterial properties. Not bad for a person supposedly living in a plant-free wasteland. Women's health was given special attention. Pregnant women followed specific dietary guidelines that modern research has shown were remarkably effective at ensuring healthy births. They ate certain parts of animals known to be rich in iron and other crucial nutrients. These traditional practices resulted in surprisingly good maternal health outcomes despite the harsh environment and lack of modern medical care. Physical fitness wasn't about running on treadmills or doing CrossFit. Daily life itself was an intense workout. Activities like hunting, gathering, and processing animals required strength, endurance, and flexibility. Children learned these skills through games and activities that developed the specific abilities needed for Arctic survival. It was like having a specialized gym program encoded into everyday life. Mental health wasn't neglected either. Strong community bonds, regular social gatherings, and traditional ceremonies all played crucial roles in maintaining psychological well-being. The practice of throat singing, for example, wasn't just entertainment. It was a way to regulate breathing and reduce stress. Modern stress management techniques have nothing on a good throat singing session. The Inuit developed unique treatments for injuries too. They set broken bones with remarkable skill, using carefully shaped pieces of wood or bone as splints. Their understanding of how to treat frostbite was so advanced that some of their techniques are still used in modern medicine. They knew exactly how to warm frozen tissue gradually to minimize damage, knowledge that came from generations of trial and error. But even with all their medical wisdom, the Inuit knew that survival in the Arctic required more than just healing skills. The Inuit had slightly bigger concerns, like avoiding becoming lunch for a 1,500-pound polar bear. Living alongside the world's largest land predator required more than just good luck and quick feet. The Inuits' relationship with Arctic predators was built on generations of careful observation and hard-won wisdom. They could read the landscape like a newspaper's crime report, spotting signs of danger long before it appeared. A scratched rock here, a disturbed snowbank there, these subtle clues told stories that could mean the difference between life and death. Polar bears posed the greatest challenge. These massive predators can smell a seal from a mile away and can break through 2 feet of ice to get to their prey. The Inuit learned to identify and avoid areas where bears were likely to hunt or den. They knew that certain ice formations and pressure ridges were prime bear territory, places modern tourists might wander into for the perfect selfie. The simple act of building a settlement required careful consideration of predator patterns. Camps were strategically placed away from known bear routes, with clear sightlines in all directions. You might call it the world's first neighborhood watch program, except instead of watching for suspicious characters, they were looking out for 8-foot-tall white bears that could outrun a horse. Sled dogs played a crucial role in predator defense. A well-trained team of dogs could detect a bear's presence long before humans could see or smell it. These dogs weren't just transportation. They were a sophisticated early warning system with fur. Each dog team typically had specific roles. Some were alerters, others were defenders, and a few were designated runners that could lead dangerous predators away from camp. The Inuit developed an intricate understanding of polar bear behavior that modern wildlife biologists are still catching up to. They knew that bears were left-pawed or right-pawed, and this knowledge helped them predict how a bear might attack. They understood that bears had different personalities. Some were naturally more aggressive, others more cautious. This wasn't just academic knowledge, it was survival intelligence. Their defensive tools were remarkably effective. Special poles were placed around camps, designed to make noise when disturbed by large animals. These ancient alarm systems worked on a simple principle: better to be woken up by a clattering pole than a bear looking for a midnight snack. They also developed specialized bear spears with crossbars that prevented an injured bear from sliding down the shaft to reach the hunter, a design feature you definitely want when dealing with an angry polar bear. But bears weren't the only concern. Arctic wolves hunted in packs, and while they rarely attacked humans directly, they posed a serious threat to dog teams and food caches. The Inuit learned to identify wolf pack territories and develop sophisticated methods to protect their supplies. They would build food storage platforms with specific designs that wolves couldn't climb, like ancient Arctic vending machines that only humans could access. Wolverines, despite their smaller size, were particularly troublesome. These powerful predators could smell food stored underground and would dig through several feet of frozen ground to get to it. The Inuit response? They developed storage methods that used wolverines' own territorial behavior against them, placing strong-smelling deterrents around food caches that made these determined raiders think twice. Even ravens posed unique challenges. These intelligent birds would work together to raid food stores and could remember human faces for years. The Inuit developed special containers and storage techniques that kept these clever thieves from making off with precious supplies. It was like having to outsmart a gang of winged masterminds who could fly and had excellent memories. Weather played a crucial role in predator awareness. The Inuit knew that certain weather conditions made predator encounters more likely. During blizzards, polar bears often moved inland, seeking shelter. Strong winds could mask the sound of approaching animals. This knowledge was integrated into daily life. Certain activities were avoided during high-risk weather conditions, and extra precautions were taken during these times. All these safety measures weren't just about avoiding danger. They were part of a larger system of survival that required constant awareness and adaptation. But in the Arctic, being alert to physical dangers was just one part of staying alive. In parts of the Arctic, darkness rules from November to January. That's like having the world's longest movie night, except nobody remembered to bring snacks and the thermostat is stuck below zero. The Inuit didn't just endure these dark months, they created ways to thrive in them. Their secret weapon against the darkness wasn't technology or artificial light. It was something far more powerful: community and culture. When the sun abandoned the Arctic, storytelling became their Netflix, gaming their social media, and music their mental health therapy. Storytelling sessions in the dark months were more than just entertainment. They were living libraries, history classes, and survival manuals rolled into one. Expert storytellers could keep audiences captivated for hours with tales that contained crucial information about hunting grounds, weather patterns, and tribal history. One story might last several nights, with each episode carefully crafted to teach different lessons. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were survival guides disguised as entertainment. A single story cycle could contain generations of accumulated knowledge about everything from weather prediction to animal behavior. The games they played weren't just about passing time. They were sophisticated training systems. String games similar to Cat's Cradle, but far more complex, helped develop the manual dexterity needed for tasks like harpoon throwing and sewing. Some of these games had hundreds of patterns, each telling a different story or representing a different animal. It was like having an entire gaming console made from a single piece of string. These games were so intricate that some patterns required up to 20 separate movements to complete. Throat singing, a unique form of musical expression, emerged as both entertainment and a practical skill. Two women would stand face to face, using each other's mouths as resonating chambers to create rhythmic patterns of sound. The first person to laugh or run out of breath lost the game. These contests could last for minutes or hours, teaching breath control that proved valuable during long hunting expeditions. Some of the most skilled throat singers could maintain their performances for over 30 minutes. Try holding your breath for even a fraction of that time. The dark months also brought out incredible feats of engineering. Using seal oil lamps and carefully positioned reflective surfaces made from ice, the Inuit could create enough light to work and socialize. A single well-placed ice window could amplify the light from a qulliq enough to illuminate an entire gathering space. They understood that the darkness wasn't just a physical challenge, it was a mental one. Communities would gather in larger igloos, sharing warmth, stories, and laughter. The close quarters might have driven modern people crazy, but for the Inuit, it was their version of a cozy winter retreat. During these gatherings, traditional sports and competitions helped maintain physical fitness. Wrestling matches and strength contests kept people active when hunting wasn't possible. Some games tested endurance, like the high kick, where participants had to kick a target suspended in the air while keeping 1 foot on the ground. The record height for this kick? Over 8 feet. Try doing that in complete darkness. Other competitions included the knuckle hop, where participants would travel across the ice supporting their entire body weight on their knuckles, a feat that would make modern CrossFit enthusiasts wince. The dark months had their own rhythm, with specific activities scheduled to create a sense of routine and purpose. Young people learned essential skills through organized teaching sessions, while elders shared their wisdom through carefully structured storytelling cycles. Communities developed complex social calendars that helped everyone stay engaged and connected, despite the lack of natural daylight. Humor played a crucial role in surviving the darkness. The Inuit developed complex wordplay and jokes that helped relieve tension and maintain perspective. Some of these jokes were so sophisticated they took days to set up, with punchlines that relied on deep understanding of language and culture. One famous type of humor involved creating elaborate stories where every word had multiple meanings. Imagine trying to tell a joke that works in 3 different languages simultaneously. Special events marked the progression of the dark season. Communities held festivals at specific points, creating landmarks in time when the sun couldn't provide them. These celebrations included feasts, drum dancing, and athletic competitions. One particularly challenging game involved carrying heavy rocks around an ice field, something modern gym enthusiasts might appreciate, minus the minus 40-degree temperatures and complete darkness. The arrival of the sun was celebrated with elaborate ceremonies, but the skills developed during the dark months weren't forgotten. The community bonds formed in darkness proved essential for survival throughout the year. Modern research has shown that these social structures were remarkably effective at preventing the kind of seasonal depression that plagues many northern communities today. Across the vast Arctic landscape, communities developed their own unique ways of marking time without sunlight. They tracked the stars, monitored wind patterns, and observed animal behaviors to maintain their connection with the natural world. Even in complete darkness, their understanding of their environment never dimmed. When the sun finally returned to the Arctic sky, it revealed a world of new possibilities and challenges that would test the Inuits' adaptability once again. Ever tried assembling furniture without instructions? Now, imagine building a vehicle tough enough to cross hundreds of miles of ice using only materials you found washed up on the beach or scavenged from hunting. The Inuit mastered this challenge, creating sleds that could handle conditions that would make a monster truck look like a toy car. These weren't just any sleds. Known as qulliq, they were engineering marvels built without a single nail or screw. Instead, they used a sophisticated system of leather lashings that allowed the sled to flex and twist over rough ice without breaking. Modern engineers have studied these designs and found them to be remarkably sophisticated. The flexible joints absorb shock better than many contemporary vehicle suspensions. The runners, the part that slides over the ice, showcase particularly clever innovation. During fall, the Inuit would collect moss and mix it with water to create a muddy paste. They'd apply this to the wooden runners and let it freeze solid. The result? A surface smoother than freshly waxed skis. This mud-ice mixture reduced friction so effectively that a properly prepared sled could glide over rough ice with minimal effort. Some hunters claimed their sleds could travel so smoothly you could barely hear them move. Dog teams were the engines that powered these Arctic vehicles, but calling them just sled dogs is like calling a Formula One car just a ride. These animals were carefully bred and trained for specific roles within the team. Lead dogs needed intelligence and independence. They had to make split-second decisions about safe ice routes. Wheel dogs, positioned closest to the sled, required raw strength and steady temperaments. A well-trained team could maintain speeds of 8 to 10 miles per hour for hours at a time. The language of dog sledding was complex enough to fill a dictionary. Different commands existed for subtle variations in direction, speed, and terrain response. Some teams understood more than 20 distinct vocal commands. Teams would respond to whistles, hand signals, and voice commands, often in conditions where the driver could barely see the lead dog through blowing snow. These weren't just pets with jobs, they were highly specialized working animals. Each dog knew its position and role in the team. Lead dogs were so valuable that they were often traded for the equivalent of several months' worth of supplies. Some lead dogs became famous throughout entire regions for their ability to find safe routes during storms or detect dangerous ice conditions. Sled construction itself was an art form passed down through generations. The wood had to be carved with perfect precision. Too thick, and the sled would be too heavy. Too thin, and it would break under stress. The spacing between crossbars was calculated to distribute weight evenly while maintaining flexibility. Even the angle of the front curve was carefully designed to help the sled ride up and over small obstacles rather than crashing into them. The lashing techniques used to hold these sleds together were so complex they would make a sailor's knots look simple. Different types of sinew and leather were used for different joints, each chosen for its specific properties of strength and flexibility. These lashings had to be regularly inspected and maintained. A failed lashing could mean disaster miles from shelter. Storage on the sleds followed equally careful planning. Weight distribution could mean the difference between gliding over the snow and bogging down in it. Hunters developed specialized packing techniques that kept essential supplies accessible while maintaining perfect balance. They could pack a sled so precisely that it would stay balanced even if half the load shifted. Navigation in the Arctic required skills that would humble a GPS. Travelers learned to read subtle variations in snow patterns, wind-carved ridges in the snow called sastrugi, and the position of stars to maintain direction. Some areas had traditional stone markers called Inuit that served as ancient signposts, marking safe routes and good hunting grounds. The relationship between drivers and their dogs was unique. Teams were often assembled based on compatible personalities rather than just physical attributes. Dogs would be matched not just in size and strength, but in working styles and social dynamics. A well-matched team could anticipate each other's movements so perfectly they seemed to operate as a single unit. Weather reading became an essential part of travel. The Inuit developed an intricate understanding of how wind patterns affected snow conditions and what these conditions meant for travel. They could predict whether a route would be passable based on subtle environmental cues that modern meteorologists are still working to understand. These centuries-old transportation methods were key to Inuit survival across the vast Arctic spaces. When winter storms descended and food became scarce in one area, the reliability of these sleds and dog teams meant families could quickly relocate to more abundant hunting grounds. The speed and efficiency of their travel systems could mean the difference between hardship and survival during the harshest months. And with the landscape constantly shifting and changing beneath their feet, this deep knowledge of movement and navigation became an essential part of their cultural heritage that still influences life in the Arctic today.